Welcome back to another reading and correcting of Crimson by me, Kindar, the Tiger Rights, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. Today we are doing Chapter 31. Alex didn't think he could stand being on this ship anymore. It wasn't what he'd done. He was angry at himself for pulling that crew, even if it was an accident. But it was done. He wanted to put it behind him, forget about it, but the crew wouldn't let him. Each time he ran into someone as he headed to his training session or as his lab, they thanked him for taking down their pursuers. Each time they acted like he'd done the best thing possible. He plastered a smile on his face and shook the offered hand, took the pats on the back good-naturedly. All this was normal for them. Alex had committed murder on a scale none of them here had, and they reacted by thanking him. That wasn't what he wanted. He wanted to be despised. There was no justification for what he'd done. Why wouldn't they stop? Let them stop then, Tristan's voice said. You're stronger than they are. Show them what happens to anyone who defies you. Why couldn't Tristan stick to being in his nightmares? Why did he have to hunt him when he was awake too? Don't kill them. How are the others going to learn to respect you? Alex wasn't going to kill again. It had been an accident. They had all been accident. He'd never killed on purpose. Alex couldn't do it anymore. So he locked himself in his cabin. At least he tried. Tried to be alone, to stop the gratitude and the temptation to give into the voice. But Will kept bypassing the lock. It wasn't that he didn't want Will around. Of everyone, he was one of the few who let him be. He'd say hi, do what he had to do, and leave. He was clearly waiting for Alex to initiate a conversation. The problem was that more than once, Will was in the wrong, and that other person just wouldn't shut up about how great Alex was. So Alex had done everything he could to disable the lock. Short of destroying it, he scrambled it, rewired it, which was the one time Will had spoken to say not to do that again. This time, Alex had merely told the computer to ignore any and all requests to open the door unless Alex spoke to it directly. He was the only one with an earpiece, so one could do that. The errant thought popped in that he should get a seer one. Maybe he'd give her his as a going away. He held the base of Jack's hollow. What would he think of what Alex had done? In his nightmares, Jack was there with Tristan, congratulating him. Tristan was proud of him for killing so many people at once, almost as many as on the Osaka. The worst of it was Alex basking in the praise, loving him. He was a killer. Jack couldn't be proud of him, and Alex couldn't understand the thought Jack might hate him. Couldn't stand the thought Jack might hate him for what he'd done. He imagined himself telling Alex he understood. He imagined him telling Alex he understood. Those had been impossible situations. He hadn't meant to kill anyone. Alex needed Jack's forgiveness. What he got instead was Tristan's voice berating him for being weak, reminding him Jack wasn't real. Tristan understood. He understood the thrill of it, the power Alex gained by doing it. In doing it, the voice wanted him to kill again. It took all of Alex's will to shut it up, and that was becoming more difficult because of the nightmares. Because of the nightmares, Alex slept less than before. Having Tristan dead, egging him on was one thing, but Jack being proud of him for killing? Alex couldn't stand it. He thought about taking the Defender out and begging it for forgiveness, but it wasn't just a hunk of stone, shaped and painted. It hadn't even shown up in his dream again. His stomach grumbled. He'd barely eaten anything food Alex brought him that morning, for shoving the tray outside, locking the door, and trying to just speeding up. I need to slow down. His stomach grumbled. He'd barely eaten anything of the food Will brought him that morning before shoving the tray outside, locking the door behind it. Hunger was the only way he could punish himself for what he'd done, so he'd go hungry. Alex looked up from the plastic base he held when the lock beeped. It beeped a few more times, but the door remained closed. Finally, Alex had managed to kick Will out. He had a moment of guilt. This was Will's room too, but Alex needed to be alone. he needed to suffer. As he watched, the log display went dark. It blinked a few times, then came back on, and the door opened. Alex watched Will enter and place a tray of food on the end of Alex's bed. Alex wanted to be angry, but he couldn't work out the energy. He eyed the food tray as Will changed, then took something from under the bed before leaving. Alex tried to resist the food, but he didn't have the willpower anymore. He drank the juice and ate a few bites of the steak before putting the tray outside the room. He didn't bother locking the door. There were a lot of ideas on how he could keep his roommate out. Will was clearly better at entering places than Alex was at locking them. Not long after that came sound Alex recognized as Not long after that came sounds Alex recognized as them docking to another ship. They were attacking someone, and the captain at the mast ordered him to help. That made sense, Alex thought. He had to be terrified Alex would blow up that one too. Sometime after that, the ship undocked. There was a celebration. Will asked if Alex wanted to come, but he didn't. But didn't insist. Will came back drunk and went on and on about how Alex had to stop moping around and how they'd start training again in the morning. It wasn't in the morning, but in the afternoon that Will dragged Alex in the bathroom and told him to clean up. That's protesting, but Will wouldn't let him out until he looked better, so he gave himself a rough shave. Alex was surprised at how long his beard had grown, a few weeks' worth at least. Then he showered. When he was presentable, Will dragged him to the gym. Alex half-heartedly went through the exercise. Didn't see a point in that, but he didn't want to argue with Will. This became Alex's only time out of the room. The ship attacked another one. Again, the captain didn't request his help. Coming back from exercising, Anders crossed their path. The man sneered and threw insult at Alex, but otherwise kept his distance. See? The voice, which had been leaving him alone, said, even Anders is scared of you now. Alex didn't want that. He wanted Anders to beat him, hurt him, as he promised he'd do. The ship docked, but none of the usual bustle from them attacking a ship came. There had been a third attack not too long ago, a few days, maybe weeks, maybe. Alex had trouble keeping track of the days. There's my cursor. Had trouble keeping track. Will came in, grabbed a box from under his bunk, threw stuff in it, and stood. Station, he said, before leaving. They were docked at the station, so no attack this time. He settled himself back to mope and realized that a station meant going off the ship, away from the crew. He showered, put on clean clothes, and headed off the ship. Ouch. Headed off. He didn't walk by anyone on the ship. It wasn't something he planned, it just happened. He wasn't planning any of this. He just needed to be away for a while. Maybe longer. He didn't know. Once he left the dock section of the station, the condition improved. The people looked to have a comfortable life. The walls were clean. Since he didn't have a destination in mind, he found himself following a lively group, having a loud discussion. As they progressed deeper into the station, the hallway became crowded, so much so that people had to push each other aside to move. But there was no anger. It was simply how things happened. Conversation mixed, some serious, other joyful. Alex couldn't make anything out from the cacophony, but the comfort everyone had with each other, the happiness of the voice, just always some of his gloom. He even found himself smiling when he caught sight of two kids, no older than 5, chasing each other around the adults' legs. Then the crowd thinned, and Alex realized they were in an open space filled with booths, a marketplace. He froze, as for a moment he thought he was elsewhere. Maybe, if he stood there, Jack would find him. He looked up, expecting to see the sky, even while knowing it was impossible. But all that was above him was the bulkhead with lamps, and with that, the illusion was broken. Jack wasn't here, in this market, buying him something. His mood dropped a little, but he would let himself fall back into depression. He was off the ship, among people going about in shopping, buying, selling, doing normal things. He walked among them and found he felt better. This was something he'd missed since leaving the Laurent 4. Normality. Nothing on the ship had been normal. That made sense. It was a pirate ship. And the one time he'd gotten off it, he'd been forced into a bar fight. Then had to run after the defender and had been abducted. Not exactly typical for Alex. He smelled meat and spices and realized he was hungry. No, he was famished. His stomach made it clear Alex was done eating only a few bites here and there. It wanted to be filled. Followed the smells to a booth with cloth walls. Cookers were lined up with pots filled with bubbling liquids in them. "What is it?" he asked the woman standing behind the counter. Alex breathed in the aroma of fruits mixed with the meat and spices. She looked at him and replied something Alex didn't understand. Alex wondered if there was something wrong with his hearing, but when she repeated himself, he realized she spoke a different language. For a moment, he was confused. She was human, like him, so why didn't she speak the same language? Then realization came, he wasn't on Delaware 4. In fact, probably wasn't in any corner of the universe he was familiar with. Of course, she wouldn't speak the same language he did. In a full rewrite, this would probably change, since I established the next book, I think, that Space God controls the language, basically forces everybody to speak the same language. He gestured to the pots and spoke slowly. And my one justification here would be that, Alex doesn't know all of that. He gestured to the pot and spoke slowly. "What is this?" He mimed eating. She smiled, nodded, and filled the bowl. Wasn't what he'd intended, but he'd know what it was. Took the bowl and shakes it in a hand, palm up. Right, that gesture. He reached for his ID card, then realized it might not work here. Different language, or maybe different system altogether. But what else did he have to pay with? Except that in his pocket, with his ID, was something else, a chip. He pulled out the credit chip. Where did that come from? Couldn't remember putting that there. Well, maybe. Or maybe one of the chips from Andrew's job had gotten stuck. Would it work? The kid at the bar, Milo, had said something about always using them. He handed it to her, and a moment later she gave it back, still smiling. So it had worked. He turned it into his fingers, but his stomach wouldn't let him think about it. Hunger now, thinking later. He found a table in a quiet corner and dug into the stew. It was sweet and savory and spicy. He didn't detect any fruit in it, and was surprised to realize the sweetness came from the meat. It was the best food he'd ever eaten. But that could have been the hunger speaking. He had a second bowl, which was just as good. He was still hungry, but he didn't go for a third. He wanted to be able to enjoy his time here, and overeating would make him lethargic. He wished Jack was with him. He'd enjoy the sparkle. The thought of Jack brought Tristan with it, and a reminder of the situation Alex was in. As much as he wanted to enjoy the market, he needed to think. And this concludes chapter 31 of Crimson. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next one's going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to listen to me, if you want to read the full book, it's available on all major e-retailer. Link is in the note, as is the link to my Patreon, should you want to support me and have access to basically everything I've written. And if you want to listen to me do these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. The rest of the week, I write. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.